Pakistanis?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah, in London? Are you kidding? Like, I know half of Coke Studio.
Right. So
Yeah,
you
I
follow the
love Coke
Pakistani music
Studio.
and
I
Pakistani rap
love
industry?
Coke Studio. India tried to make a Coke Studio, and it's like, I'm just like over here like, okay, bless you, India. I love you, but like, let Pakistan have one thing.
And one of the most interesting bits is that in Pakistan, there has been religious extremism for so damn long, and
Of
for
course.
decades. We've got military dictators, and what they
I
did
know.
was
Yeah.
they mixed religion with
ISI.
politics in such a toxic combination that it also had an effect on the performing arts industry. I mean, we literally had no good film industry for decades. But guess what? Despite all the radicalization and Ziaul Haq's Islamization, Pakistan's music industry kept thriving. And today, I do
Nusrat
believe
Fateh Ali Khan. I
Nusrat
read
Fateh Ali
about
Khan,
this.
all right,
I
Abda
read about
Parveen.
this. This is like one of the things that like the Pakistani government has never really been able to crush. One of the Pakistan's biggest issue since its inception was that its ruling elites never really liked its people. They were
Yeah,
never good enough for the elites as they were. And they tried to squash away all the uniqueness of what Pakistanis were, which were Sufis,
yeah,
majority Sufi, a
absolutely.
very unique Sufi, very unique traditions, only really found in South Asia. And they tried to squash all this out, but by some magic, under Zia-ul Haq, for some reason, he kept letting Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan sing because it was devotional, even though it was Sufi music. And
Absolutely.
now, like,
Yeah.
I've been watching, like, so many Pakistani youth are rediscovering Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan, are falling in love with Qawwali music. And it's just one thing they couldn't squish because it's so a part of the people.
Yeah, Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan. Today we've got one of his descendants, Rahat Fateh Ali Khan, and he's also made waves internationally across the border. I think
Yeah.
Pakistani music scene is very rich, and among the contemporary singers that we have, I mean, I really cannot think of somebody whom I could compare to Ali Sethi, for instance, in this day and
Yeah.
age, and
I
Sheikh
love him.
and all these people. So I do believe that India has a lot of talent. I love their songs. I love Bollywood songs, by the way. But I do think the Pakistani music industry, they have a flavor of their own, the kind of music that they produce. And
Yeah,
there's a great
because
variety.
Pakistan's the difference. I mean, I love so many Indian singers. Let's not discount India's music. Like, it's amazing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Like Lata
Lata Mangeshkar.
Mangeshkar. Yeah. Juban Nautiyal is a favorite of mine. He's my favorite singer.
Mine as well.
Shreya Ghoshal.
Yeah.
But
A.R.
I think
Rahman's
that
music. My
the what?
goodness. A.R. Rahman's music.
Yeah,
Again,
exactly,
that's
exactly.
unparalleled. Yeah.
The key difference between Pakistani music and Indian music is that Pakistan for many decades never had a movie industry. So
Yeah.
Pakistan's music is music for the sake of music.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's just music for the sake of music. And quite frankly, it's so rich
It's
because
very
for
rich.
so many decades, Pakistanis were practicing this behind closed doors. They were doing it in secret. They were doing it in the back roads, and they were practicing this like as almost as a form of resistance. We know the story of Iqbal Bano. So
Absolutely.
it has a different history. Whereas in India, music is part of the movie industry.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
And not to like, I'm obsessed with Bollywood. I love Bollywood
Who
so
doesn't?
much.
Yeah.
I love Bollywood.
Right.
But that's like the key difference between the two industries is that Pakistan's music industry is music for the sake of music. India's music industry is thriving and amazing, but it's part of the movie industry as well.
It's
So
filmy
it
music. That's
feels,
what I call it. It's filmy music. Whereas
yeah,
Pakistani music is more experimental even. They
yeah,
are experimenting with so many different genres these days, and we've got these little indie singers and bands which are coming up every now and then in Pakistan. And I think it used to be somewhat similar in 90s India, when I remember there used to be singers like Rageshwari. They used to be one of those. They were Stereo Nation, Hari Haran and Leslie Lewis. They used to make indie music, but now they don't do that in India anymore. It's intertwined with Bollywood. Here in
yeah.
Pakistan, just like you said, we make music for music's sake. So Well,
Yeah, because
that's true.
there was no film industry,
Yeah,
and
there was none.
because of, well, really, it's like Zia was by far one of the worst, but he just crushed everything.
I mean, you were still paying the price of whatever Zia-ul Haq did, and that's the name of my first
And
book,
that's, yeah,
Paying the Price.
exactly. And so many years in Pakistan, there's like film and TV. There just wasn't anything there. That's why, of course, 90s Bollywood was a bit in more of an Urdu Hindi mix, so Pakistanis could also watch.
Yeah.
But music in Pakistan was like the one creative outlet that people could get away with and express themselves, and that's why it's developed in the way that it has. Now there's, the Pakistani film industry is kind of coming back. You've got some amazing actors like Fawad Khan. You've got
Mahira
some
Khan.
really, really like international
yeah.
level actors in the Pakistani film industry. But that legacy of the music being the soul's output for so many Pakistanis for so many years, it really just is never going to go away.
Yeah, and I think Pakistan's music actually reflects the resilience of this nation. There's a lot that is said about Pakistanis being resilient, and I do believe that we did not choose to be resilient, but circumstances really put us in a situation where we had to be resilient. And so, as somebody who lives in the US, who's traveled the world, who has so many different identities, as you have, when you look at Pakistan from the lens of what international media tells you, from the lens of whatever Pakistani culture that you know of and have explored on your own, what do you really think is Pakistan's biggest problem, looking at from a distance?
The leadership. Absolutely the leadership. Hands down. It's always been the leadership. It's always been like Jinnah died very quickly, and his vision, like he probably would have left Pakistan in the Sufi way that it was when it was during the partition. He probably would have left Pakistanis largely to themselves. His vision was a bit more of a Sufi vision of, yes, we're going to be Muslim majority, but also we're going to coexist. We're not going to make any laws on the basis of religion or ethnicity. We want yes, this is a safe haven. This is a safe haven for Muslims, but also we don't want it to be at the expense of anybody. That was his vision. And then he died.
Yeah.
And in a panic, much of the Pakistani political elite, they just started having these ideas. They always have been trying, Pakistan's issue is that like its leadership has always been trying to shape Pakistanis in their image. This artificial image imparted onto the people. The people like are finding it of themselves, and they always have been. They always have been. Like they are a people with a lot of culture. People with people when we see like partition movies, we often see it from the Indian perspective, but going the opposite way into Pakistan, like people forget that Islam in the Indian subcontinent has an extremely unique history that's not really found anywhere else in the world, and the people I love the Indian subcontinent. The people there are very special people with a very special history. And the problem with Pakistan is that its leadership from its early inception never really wanted to honor that history. Never really wanted Pakistanis to just be who they were. They always were trying to form them in their image. And this also culminated in the 1970s in Bangladesh, because Bangladeshis, Bengalis, they weren't like Northwest Indians and Pakistanis. So that was a problem.
The Urdu language was imposed on them forcibly.
I know. Yeah, exactly. This is something they've always been trying to shape the people.
I so wish that our leaders and all the people who had been brainwashed by them, if they could only respect the diversity that existed and that still exists in Pakistan, because we've got people who are ethnically diverse, be those Baloch or Pashtuns or Sindhis, or even religion-wise. And there were so many religious minorities here, and they've shrunk to such a small size that it really hurts me. And whatever little is left of our religious minorities, I really want to hold on to them, because they're the ones who connect us to our very rich cultural heritage and history.
Oh, there's so much, Pakistan. So, I'm obsessed with Taxila. Taxila is the oldest, people like to say, Greece this. I'm like, no. Taxila University, look it up. And this is just another example. Like the government has absolutely neglected that university because it's part of Vedic history. It's a tie to India, the broader Indian history. So it's very neglected. It's an inconvenient like part of the country. Like the government's just like, it's that Hindu thing, but it's
Yeah.
yours. These are your
This is
ancestors
our history.
too.
And you know what
It's
happens
your
is,
ancestors,
I
babe.
remember
And it's amazing.
like around 4 years ago, we were being told by the government that we are Turkish and Turkish history is our history. And then we've been told that actually Arab history is our
I'll
history.
tell
We are
you,
Arabs.
Urdu is enough. Kafi hai. I love it. I love it. Like it's beautiful thing about Urdu is that it's Persian is a very heavy language. It's a
Yes.
very weighty, romantic, sing-songy language.
Yeah.
And then and the thing about Urdu, so I don't know who's listening, but Urdu is written in an abjad, which means you only mark the vowels sometimes. Now, Hindi, Devanagari, is an abugida,
Yeah.
and it's structured slightly differently, meaning that the character, so let's say this is a B. When you're reading the character in Hindi, it's not just B, it's B. It's not just it's M.
Yeah.
It always has an implicit vowel afterwards that's not marked, and that's the structure of the language. And you add a little hat to make it ba. You add a little beard to make it boo. What's interesting is knowing both Devanagari and now Farsi, I can kind of see how South Asian people adapted Farsi words by spelling Farsi exactly as you would spell it in Persian in Devanagari.
You know,
It's absolutely the best of both worlds.
I'm so impressed with the knowledge of South Asian languages, and I want to ask you, can you speak Urdu?
तो पूरी हिंदी मुझे नहीं आती, लेकिन
थोड़ी थोड़ी उर्दू
काफी हिंदी मुझे पता है. तो उर्दू नहीं पता, बस हिंदी. और हिंदी में जब मैं फिल्म देखती थी कि कोई उर्दू शब्द इसमें है.
तो बस उर्दू और हिंदी एक ही चीज है तकरीबन, ऑलमोस्ट.
हाँ, बहनों भाषा है, लेकिन शुद्ध हिंदी या शुद्ध उर्दू ये बहुत अलग है.
बहुत अलग. One of the strangest things that happens to me is I use a lot of Hindi, by the way. And in Pakistan, unfortunately, what happens is that Hindi language, people don't like it when I speak it because it reminds them of India. But I still go ahead and I use Hindi. So, whenever I'm speaking to people, I go like, हमारे प्रधानमंत्री कौन है? Or I keep on saying, हमने आपको न्योता दिया है. And these kinds of words, I keep on introducing into, because again, there's a shared cultural history. And
Urdu was born in Delhi.
Yeah.
Urdu is born in Delhi. Urdu is Persian and Khari Boli's baby.
And there are, so many words, even on Pakistani television news, by the way, that our politicians and analysts use, and they are Hindi. They say words like Ashirwad or Samaj. So I don't think you can completely remove a language, particularly if it
No, because Hindi is not a single language. Hindi is not a single language. It's a continuum of languages.
Yeah.
It's a completely organic continuum from the middle of India, like Bihar, all the way to Pakistan. It's not a single language.
So
it's a continuum of hundreds of dialects.
And we can certainly not remove our identity. But, one very interesting thing I've got to share with you is that in a post-2001 world, what's happened to people like me is that in my country, as a liberal, progressive Pakistani, if that's a thing at all, the right wing, the religious right wing, keep disliking people like me. Oh, because not Muslim enough. And then what happens is that in the Western world, where we are seeing the rise of far-right populism, their problem with me is too much of a Muslim. And so I'm really famished.
You're never going to be good enough for everyone, yeah. Yeah.
So how do you see this, particularly the rise of far-right, racist, xenophobic parties and politicians in the Western world, parallel to Mullahism in countries like Pakistan, for example? How does one make sense of this?
I mean, it's nationalism. It's all nationalism. It's the same kind of nationalism. Like in Pakistan, people gather around what they call Islam. In America, people gather around what they call Christianity, but it's all kind of the same gravitation. It has a different name, but it's all kind of the same gravitation as Pakistan, like, has good reason to be distrustful of America. has good reason to hate the West, has good reason to be polaric to anything America does. And I actually think in some ways, I actually think America has played a part in the rise of far-rightism in Pakistan as well. I really do, because if you're a Pakistani and you just had fucking... Sorry, did I swear?
Yeah, but that's a good word. I like that word.
Okay, but if you're Pakistani and you just had one of Obama's drones bomb your wedding, you're like, tere gaan mein daan America. I'm gonna go make sure I'm the least American person that ever lived, you know? And I really think America's kind of laid out this bed for us in Pakistan. If people are gathered around an idea, then they won't look at us, the people who are really making their lives terrible and who sold Pakistan out to the United States.
Well, my position on this is because we had Imran Khan, and one of his most famous sayings was absolutely not. So he was once asked on HBO as to whether he would provide military bases to the US in Pakistan, and his answer was absolutely not. And Pakistanis cheered him on. But at this stage where I stand, I always say one thing. If the US wants you to create more of those religious fundamentalists, yes, absolutely not. But if the USA wants to partner with Pakistan for its own interests, I understand, but in a way which also benefits Pakistani economy by de-radicalizing the country, I say absolutely yes. Then that's where you need to get on with the world.
I don't think that's ever going to happen with the way Pakistan's government is structured. I think, as we talked about Zia ul Haq, before Zia, Pakistan already had many iron-fisted leaders.
Ayub Khan and all
with the military.
Yeah.
But after Zia, he completely rearranged the role of the military, the role of the Secret Service in the structure of Pakistan's governance. And after Zia, even though he's gone, those changes have never been undone. Why? Because they now have power. And that, quite frankly, they need Pakistanis to be despondent. They need them to be clinging to other ideas, because if Pakistanis actually, looked upwards at the leadership, they'd realize who their enemy is, and they'd be able to say to themselves, actually, I don't think you actually really like us. I actually don't think you have our best interests in mind. I want you gone. And they would lose their power.
But something very interesting has been going on for the last 2 weeks in Pakistan. So there's this organization called TLP, which is a religious fundamentalist party, and which plays blasphemy politics. And they have created havoc, particularly in Punjab, Lahore, the part of Pakistan that I live in. Somehow, interestingly, and deep down, that's exactly what I've wanted for a very long time. There is a state crackdown on them all of a sudden. And then the Pakistani establishment, they're also fighting off TTP, which is an offshoot of Taliban itself. Somehow, it's just very interesting. For some odd reason, dynamics seem to have changed, and I'm hoping against hope that just something miraculously happens in the country and we become normal, functioning, free and devoid of religious fundamentalism kind of a country, where although there is authoritarianism, as it is in UAE or something, but at least we can function on a day-to-day basis. So, we do live in a crazy world right now as I'm speaking.
Yeah, it feels like, I'm a hopeless revolutionary. I don't believe in reforming, things that have had their chance. There's a poem by Fez, Gulon Merang Phare Bade No Bahar Chale. As the breeze comes to fill the flowers with their color, come to me, my love, so the garden can go about its business. I think Pakistanis are, at their very core, a gorgeous people. And I think the government, after 70 odd years, almost 80. Yeah, I think they've had their chance to make it work. And I just don't think with the government that's there, I just don't think they really want Pakistan to thrive. And I think it's going to be I want Pakistan to have like a huge revolution. That's what I want. I want Pakistan to have a huge revolution, like just earth-shattering revolution of a, and I know this is just like a pipe dream, but I really like this would be perfect. But in order for that to happen, I think the international community would need to move against the government of Pakistan in ways that they don't really want to move because they're a very convenient geopolitical partner.
Yeah, but well, I mean, I hope that the international community realize that Pakistan could only be a viable international partner in the long term if Pakistan itself is functional to a certain extent, at
Yeah.
least, because the thing is that all the religious fundamentalists, I don't believe that they are a threat only to progressive people like me, but time and again they've proven they're also a threat to the entire world, actually. And so the international community will have to partner with Pakistan to counter that form of terrorism, to counter that form of extremism, and fingers crossed. But I've also seen that you have been doing a lot of activism, at least through what you say and through what you speak, for the civilians in Gaza, and I really respect you for that. And as I'm speaking
I
to
mean,
you, Israel has
it's
ordered fresh strikes on Gazans again after the ceasefire.
yeah.
What do you have to say about that?
I mean, we knew it was going to happen.
Yeah.
We knew it was going to happen. And the timing of it is almost immediately during Netanyahu's corruption trial. Go figure. Go figure. He had a corruption trial and it was interrupted by an emergency. Woo. Like, Israel's not going to stop. Israel's not going to stop unless there's meaningful international action against Israel. And, I just had an epiphany the other day. So I've been working and traveling in Bosnia for the last 10 years. I performed there a lot and I have a lot of friends there. And one of like the most pivotal part of my life was going to Bosnia and talking to survivors and learning about genocide. And this was very foundational for me as a person because you learn about Islamophobia before we had a word for Islamophobia.
Yeah.
Like you look at what the Serbs said about Bosnians. It's part and parcel. You can copy and paste the excuses for the Bosnian genocide onto much of the media narrative about Muslims today. And I had this extremely depressing thought that I think if we had influencers and social media in the 90s, there would be a subset of the internet that would be pro-Bosnian genocide. And and that's how easily people are manipulated. That's how easily people are manipulated.
I think, living in the age of social media, artificial intelligence, what it's done is it has exacerbated the hatred and the divisive.
No, because they need to sell views.
Yeah.
And anger sells views.
Sells views. And the algorithm favors, the more inflammatory, the more incendiary the content is, the more eyeballs it's going to grab. And
yeah. But there's for people who want to make content, go for polarity. Go for polarity, but not necessarily shock value. And I think shock value, as a content creator, shock value is a bit of a cheap way to get views. And you can get a lot of views, and I guess if that's all you care about. But going for polarity, being a big personality and taking up space can also get views, can also make an impact. But yeah, I think these billionaires, they know what sells. They know
people
what
Elon Musk. And you know what? Elon Musk.
He's a fucking Nazi.
Elon Musk.
He's a fucking
during
Nazi.
that Unite the Kingdom rally led by Tommy Robinson on 13th September in London, he had joined them online, just as you've
The way, oh my God, I remember living in the UK. I remember Tommy Robinson being like the butt of a joke. Like he was such a joke. The way he's been able to rebrand himself for Americans. Americans have no idea who Tommy Robinson is. The gammon embarrassment that he is to the country. Like he's so okay. Tommy Robinson has rebranded himself for Americans, and he's going into a little bit more religious talk, like
Christian
God
revivalism. That's what he's up to.
Yeah. But the thing is, that works for Americans. Americans go for that. You'd be hard pressed to unite English people around religion. And just want to point out that Netanyahu's corruption trial started back up again today, and now magically there's an emergency situation where he has to kill Palestinians.
Absolutely, and
Incredible.
that's exactly what he's doing right now as we're speaking. And I think that that's what the news is all about, other than also the fact that, the RSF have started with their genocide on people in
Oh,
Sudan
they've
in the
been
south.
at the genocide. They've been at the genocide.
Yeah, they've been at the genocide. But what really interests me is that the word genocide is used rightly for what is happening in Sudan, but it all of a sudden becomes so controversial when we speak about what has been going on in Gaza, particularly after 7th October 2023. Why has this word been politicized so much?
Because in Western culture, I think a lot of people, the Holocaust took over every part of Europe. Yeah. And it's very present in the European memory and the American memory. And we, I think, don't want to say that someone who could be victimized could also be a victimizer. And I think that's an inconvenient kind of idea to have, because I think people are worried that by saying the state of Israel is committing genocide, that by somehow retroactively, does that mean that somehow the Holocaust was deserved? No, of course not. I think that's what people fear. And we can hold two truths, that Hitler's Nazi Germany committed a genocide against the Jewish people because they were Jewish, because of who they are. And now, separately, the state of Israel, which is a completely separate entity, a completely separate state, which calls itself Jewish, which purports to be Jewish, is indisputably committing genocide against the Palestinian people. And I think it's the natural end of Zionism. I think it's the natural through point of Zionism, that you come to a place with a people that already lived there. And from its inception, this has always been a very inconvenient truth. It has always been very, the way that Zionists talk about Palestine, as if it was empty, as if there was just nothing there. They've already had this fantasy of just this obliteration in their heads for the last 77 years, that the Palestinians already don't exist in their minds. So the natural through point to see through to the end of the obliteration, that's a natural through point of thinking like that. And in their minds, the Palestinians already don't exist.
And so it hinges upon dehumanization of Palestinian civilians, because either you equate them to groups like Hamas, which, by the way, those children are not, those men and women who are civilians, 2/3 of people who've been killed by Israeli strikes, they're not Hamas. You've either equated them to Hamas, or you've just rendered them not human for some odd reason. I don't know through what mental gymnastics, but that's exactly what you've done. Recently in USA, there's this British academic who's been detained by ICE in San Francisco, if I'm not wrong.
And
Sami. And that is happening under Donald Trump's watch, the way he has deployed National Guard troops in various American cities, and the way he's trying to consolidate his control over all parts of America and institutions and academic spaces. How do you, because you are sitting in the USA right now as you're speaking, how do you see the changing political dynamics within the United States of America, which was the bastion of democracy and human rights?
America's always kind of not been, America's purported a lot of freedom, and in the undercurrent, it's always been very different. Look at when America says freedom, they go to these countries, and Americans are taught that they're going to free them. They're going to free the people. And you had Iraqis in 2001, 2002, who were like, yeah, come America, come, fuck Saddam Hussein, la, la, la. And then, as a consequence of that war, literally millions of Iraqis died. And this is not something that's actively taught in schools. It's not something that's actively normalized in American society. We have an exceptionalism mentality, like we're just impervious. We're so free. We're so free. We're just impervious, And that's very dangerous. That's very dangerous when you have a country that is above international law. Say, for instance, Afghanistan tried to, because Afghanistan is a part of the ICC, Afghanistan tried to bring American troops to justice for war crimes in Afghanistan during the first Trump administration, and he threatened the ICC with sanctions, with actions, if they dared.
You've just talked about the ICC International Criminal Court. I do remember that in 2019, Donald Trump had imposed sanctions on the then prosecutor Fatou Bensouda, and now they're following that up with Karim Khan. And this hypocrisy, that when it's the same International Criminal Code which imposes sanctions on, issues arrest warrants against Vladimir Putin for what he's doing in Ukraine, the same USA and its allies, they cheer on ICC. And the moment the ICC also tells us that along with Hamas, even Netanyahu has committed war crimes, and so they issue arrest warrants.
Israel executed. Here's the thing, Israelis executed everyone that the ICC had a warrant for in Hamas. They had Yahya Sinwar. They had Ismail Haniyeh. They had ICC warrants for these guys, and Israel executed every single one of them. And then it's just it's just biased. It's just biased. It's biased. There's no ICC. You killed everyone that the ICC wanted to arrest. So now, and then they're like, biased. Only Israel. You killed them all. Girl.
I could see that there was no such thing as rule of law in the international domain. I always saw through that. But just how blatantly the so-called rules-based global order has collapsed completely after
It never existed. It never existed.
But it had never been so
especially
blatant.
in Palestine. Especially in Palestine. All these massacres in Palestine go back to Israel's inception. The first time Israel occupied Gaza was in 1956.
Yeah.
1956. The first proper occupation, because the Gaza Strip prior to 1948 did not exist. It was all one country. It was different districts. Gaza is a number of districts, and also part of historic Gaza is also now part of Israel. So the Gaza Strip is a colonial creation because Israel came to exist.
Many people say that it was Israel that created Hamas. Do you agree with that, or do you think that's a conspiracy theory?
No, I think Hamas came out as an armed group, I think, organically, but Hamas is a very convenient ideological split, because if you an organization like Hamas, which is more fundamentalist, versus some Palestinians in other ideologies that maybe want secular rule, that maybe want pluralistic rule, because Hamas is a single party system. Funding Hamas was a great idea, because if you constantly have two battling halves of the Palestinian people, it's very convenient that you can just you're on top and they're just going at each other, because you're funding one ideology, one ideology, and they're fighting with the other people who want something different. So that and Netanyahu has openly said this, that I am proud to have thwarted the creation of a Palestinian state by funding Hamas in exactly this way, keeping Palestinians split, keeping them from talking to each other, keeping them from building community with each other, keeping them from reconciling with each other, and coming up with a better political system, because even people who don't like Hamas still support, for instance, armed resistance. Even in Gaza, when Hamas's support is at its lowest, support for actually the act of armed resistance stays the same. It stays exactly the same. And this is kind of Israel's idea, is just fund this group, this fundamentalist group, and just keep the money flowing. That they'll just be bickering with the other side, and they'll never come up with anything different. Because if Palestinians had a thriving political system, if they had political leaders that could stand up for the people, that could stand up in the international community for the needs of the Palestinian people, then Israel would be in trouble. So always keep them debilitated, always keep them bickering, and that's been Israel's policy. Netanyahu has said that publicly.
So, there's one thing that I hear very frequently. So whenever I say that I do not agree, and that's an understatement, I do not agree with the Israeli state's policies in Gaza and in Palestine and in the West Bank, automatically, what pro-Israelis answer back is, why do you not, with the same sort of force and rigor, why do you also not talk about Muslims actually being cruel to Muslims themselves, like what they've been doing, what the Houthis have been doing in Yemen, or what is now happening in Sudan and al-Fasher.
Well, if you talk about having bananas for breakfast, then why don't you also talk about not about yogurt? Like, it's just so random. All Hasbra is just this deflection. Like, anytime you get close to, and I'm not gonna discount that there's a lot of anti-Semitism floating around. Like, I see it. Like, I see the Khazar theory floating around. I call it out. But anytime you get legitimately close to the core of an issue in Israeli society, like, for instance, there was a workout video. Did you see that? Where there was girls working out in a class singing a song, "May Your Village Burn."
Yeah.
Like,
yeah,
burn, die, die. Yay, workout. Whoo, burn calories. Like, anytime, and that's not normal. That doesn't happen. Like, I want you to name a country other than Iran under the IRGC, any other country that just sits there saying death to an entire people. Because the only other people I can think of that are like that is North Korea under the North Korean regime and the IRGC in Iran. Those are the only groups of people that I can think of off the top of my head who literally find joy and pleasure in saying death, 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 death. And you have these girls in what is allegedly like a liberal oasis of democracy, equal rights, and just like, no, it's actually, you have a very racist country built on supremacism, and anytime you get remotely close to the crux of an issue in Israeli society or the crux of an issue in Israeli policy, where Israel is not a glistening city on a hill, Israel is not this egalitarian equal rights society, anytime you get close to that, it's always deflection. What about this? What about that?
It's whataboutism. You know what my answer to these sort of questions is? My answer is that the whole world condemns what's been going on in Sudan, what the RSF are doing in Sudan.
The people sounding off the loudest yesterday are Palestinians.
Absolutely.
Are Palestinians. As soon as anything happened, it was Palestinians in Gaza who said, if you cried for Gaza, cry for Sudan.
And even
if you cried for Palestine, cry for Sudan.
Even Israel supporters, they condemn what RSF is doing in Sudan. They condemn what the Houthis have been doing or what has been happening to people in Yemen. The problem is that when Israel does something of that sort or even worse, all of a sudden those with the largest microphones in the world, they step forward and they start calling
now there's a reason, because it's happening to Palestinian.
Absolutely. So it's got to do with racism, the R word. Because the thing is that when Israel indulges in genocide, war crimes, absolutely. So all of a sudden we are gaslighted into believing that, oh, this is self-defense. Or, oh, if civilians are dying, then that is collateral damage. And that is why there is more emphasis on what Israel is doing than, say, what's been happening in Sudan or Yemen. That's my counter-argument to those people. And one thing...
Also, my tax dollars are not funding the RSF.
That's the point.
My government is cooperating with the UAE, and I'm planning a video with a script on what Americans can demand of the United States government. By the way, if you're American, call your representative and demand that they sanction actors from within the UAE who are responsible for funding and abetting the RSF. Call them. Go call them and say, what are you doing to sanction actors in the UAE who are funding the RSF?
And as we're talking, I also want to bring your attention to something that very recently Nigel Farage's Reform UK Party member Sarah Pochin has said. And she said that she's sick of looking at brown and black and Asian people in advertisements. And when Dawn Butler called her out on that in the House of Commons in the UK today, Dawn Butler was asked to shut up. She was asked to apologize for calling Sarah Pochin a racist. And actually, people like Nigel Farage are saying, hey, but what she's saying, it's freedom of opinion. So do you think hate speech is freedom of opinion?
This is very much giving. I remember. So for those of you outside the UK, the word Paki is a bad word. But in the 70s, there was the Paki bashings, where Bangladeshis escaping genocide came to the UK. Now, of course, at that time, it was East Pakistan. So they were called Pakistanis and shortened to the racist slur Paki. And the Paki bashings, why they're called Paki bashings is because they were attacking Bangladeshi businesses so much that they gave what they were doing a name. and they were smashing in windows, lynching people, murdering people, just gammon skinhead British men marauding through London, lynching people, and people died. And Margaret Thatcher, who was Prime Minister at the time, sits there. Well, I think British people just want to see people that look like them in their country. It was like, well, you should have thought about that before 200 years of ruling India, baby.
I'd like to just mention, so here I am, I'm standing in such a position where I am anti-Mullahism in my own country. I don't like the right wing, the religious right wing in the Muslim world, because I think that they've wreaked havoc upon their own people in the world. But at the same time, I'm also anti-Hindutva, and I'm not for Zionism. I'm not for white supremacy.
The
so
thing
I stand against all these right wingers.
Yeah.
What is one to do in such a polarized world where practically everybody hates or dislikes you?
I think, well, the thing that Hindutva, the thing that Mullahism, the thing that Zionism, the thing that Christian nationalism all have in common is that they are trying to fit the infinity of humanity. Humanity is infinitely diverse, infinitely evolving. There is no box within to put humanity. They're trying to fit the infinite in the finite. And if you are, every human being is an infinite amount of potential, an infinite amount of experiences, an infinite amount of variables. And if you don't fit into those very small parameters by which you're allowed to be humanized in those systems, you're enemy number one. Zionism is very similar. Zionism is very, very similar. Like the way that they talk about Jews who aren't like 100% on board with an ethno-state. Oh, well, you just must not be Jewish. Like it's if you don't fit into my worldview, then you're enemy number one.
Absolutely, because Zack Polanski, who's the leader of Green Party, and he's Jewish himself, but the way that Zionists demonize and vilify him, it's all out in the open. And do you think that Islamists also have that streak in them of this expansionism, of trying to dominate the other?
Oh yeah, you see it in Iran, for instance, like perfect example of like in Iran, even if you're a cleric and you don't dance and sing for the regime, boop, off with your head. That's a perfect example of kind of how a place that calls itself, Islamic. Well, it's an ideologue. If you're outside of their ideas, if you're outside of their ideology, you're enemy number one.
And so finally, you're in New York City again. Am I right?
Yeah.
Mayoral election, Zohran Mamdani versus Andrew Cuomo, and that third Republican person who's so insignificant that I don't even remember his name.
Curtis Sliwa. He's just so funny. He's so New York. Like, I was shot in 1992 in the back of the yellow taxi.
An alleged sexual abuser.
Cuomo's a sexual abuser.
Cuomo is an alleged sexual abuser.
Yeah.
What is going to happen?
Oh, no, he was. It's credible.
Yeah.
It's absolutely credible.
So what do you think is going to happen on 4th November?
Zohran's going to win.
Yay.
Knock on wood.
Yeah. Fingers crossed.
It feels like 2001 again, to be honest, with the amount of just blind hatred and ignorance about, like, people are saying Zohran celebrated September 11th. He was 9. He was 9 years old. He did not, I was a kid as well during 9/11. I did not know what was going on. Like, I didn't understand it, like, for some time. Like, he's celebrating just so many stupid things. But I think Zohran is going to win, and I think it's going to be an important turning point in this country. I think a lot of people, especially in this political climate, are looking for beacons of hope in the nonsense. And I think Zohran, for a lot of progressive people, is that beacon of hope. Like if we can elect him, we'll have the last bastion against Trump. It could be New York.
And I
really hope that too.
What if Trump delivers on his promise to deport Zohran Mamdani?
Oh, I think it's going to be a big battle. I think it's going to be a huge battle. I don't think he's going to be able to do it. I think he'll be met with a tidal wave of resistance. But I think for a lot of people, and myself included, like, people are clinging to Zohran in this time because they see the rise of fascism in this country, and we need little beacons of hope. And especially for me as a queer person,
Uh,
the way that
I mean,
MAGA...
President Connolly has won the Irish presidential election.
I
That's
know, but
another beacon of
Ireland's
hope.
always very woke. Ireland's always very woke. They're always with it. Like they're always on it. They're always like,
Yeah.
They like, Ireland's actually a very interesting. They were colonized and occupied and erased for hundreds of years, and then got their country back, and they're just like,
Well,
Ireland.
yeah.
Like, it's, they walk into a room and like all these occupiers, and they're just like, actually, doesn't matter how long you occupy.
I mean, so it
the
gives me a
indigenous...
glimmer of hope, because recently in Ireland, even, with all that you've said, the far right have been protesting outside hotels, asylum hotels in Dublin, and they've been protesting against immigrants. And yet, in that political climate, somebody like Connolly won the presidential election. I mean, there's hope for people like Mamdani. There's hope for somebody like Zack Polanski and the Zara Sultana, Jeremy Corbyn coalition to come forward and counter the threat that's being presented by the likes of Nigel Farage and Tommy Robinson. So I just hope for a better world, a more tolerant, secular world.
And I think the thing that the thing that makes Zohran so attractive to people versus establishment Democrats is that establishment Democrats talk in ideas, but people like Zohran and people like Bernie Sanders talk to people in terms of their needs. They come down to the ordinary person and they say, hey, your life is expensive. You're struggling in this, that, and I see these struggles, and I've had these struggles, and here's how I'm gonna listen to you about what you're going through, and I want to know how to make it better. And there are MAGA people who are listening to Zohran Mamdani talk and being like, hey, actually, I really dig how he's talking, and he's meeting people where they are, and I think that's very contagious. It's
I
over.
think
It's
Zohran
been replaced by
Mamdani,
Trump.
he's emerged at a time now when we're seeing government shutdown in the US, and so many of the federal workers there, they are not getting their payments. Some of them are being furloughed, and also he's not scapegoating immigrants like the other politicians or even the other Democrats do. He's not saying that this is because of immigrants, but it's all because of bad policies, austerity, cuts to federal spending. And same is the case in the UK, when we've got people like Zack Polanski, who said it's not small boats, it's those people on the yachts, those millionaires who are not being taxed, the wealthy landlords, and it's because of them that there's a cost of living crisis. And I do think that this is the kind of political talking points that need to be mainstreamed in this day and age, not those which stoke culture wars and fuel people's anger. So yeah, I think it was a very interesting talk I had with you, and I truly treasure it.
So good to talk to you.
And you're so good in your analysis of things. I think you really get to the bottom of everything that's wrong.
Thank you so much. Thank you.